This film tells the story of a woman, Anne, living alone in the forest after a zombie virus outbreak devastates the world and collapses human civilization. Every day she performs the same activities: cleaning herself, searching for food supplies, listening for information on the radio, and hunting small animals, all just to survive. Before the outbreak, she had a husband and a young child. As the virus began to spread, her husband Jason decided to leave the city and head to a remote forest away from settlements. While in the forest, her husband, an expert hunter, tried to teach her all his knowledge because surviving in the woods without food and water supplies is not easy. Initially, she thought she didn't need to learn everything since she still had a husband to protect her. However, her husband always insisted that she learn everything. It turns out, his advice was not in vain, because since his death, she has been able to survive in the forest alone, relying on all the experience taught by her husband. One day, when she was running low on food and couldn't catch any animals, she tried covering her entire body with mud so the zombies couldn't smell her. Carefully, she began to roam until she found a house that seemed to have food supplies. Before entering, she set up a bait smeared with her own blood to lure the zombies inside the house. After the zombies were attracted by the bait, she quickly went into the house and took all the supplies like ammunition and other food supplies. When she was done, she slowly tried to leave, but the zombies realized her presence and she had to hurry, accidentally injuring herself in the process. This made her quickly treat her wound to prevent it from worsening. The next day, as she was looking for food supplies, she suddenly saw two people passing through the area, and it seemed one of them was injured. After ensuring the man had not been bitten by a zombie, she asked about their identities. They were Olivia and Chris. Olivia then shared that she and Chris, who is her stepfather-to-be, came from a village in the south. Initially, Chris and Olivia's mother planned to marry, but unfortunately, their plans were thwarted as the zombie outbreak spread to their village, infecting Olivia's mother and turning her into a zombie. Initially, Olivia said they would leave as soon as Chris recovered from his injuries. However, it seems she allowed them to stay longer, and so Olivia tried to help her in activities like searching for food supplies and other tasks. Seeing this, she tried to teach them a little of what she knew about how to hide from zombie attacks, from how to disguise their scent to how to traditionally hunt food. Olivia mentioned that she and Chris planned to head north because they had heard news of soldiers who had managed to build a shelter. However, when Anne tried to help find information through the radio, unfortunately, they could not find any information about the area in the north. Shortly after, when they returned, Chris had regained consciousness and praised Anne for her ability to survive alone against the zombies. Still, Chris expressed his concern about being a burden if he stayed too long, so he planned to leave the next day. He thanked Anne because without her help, they both would have been attacked by the zombies roaming around. In short, the next day, Anne thought that Chris and Olivia had left. However, it seemed they were struggling because it was raining outside, so Anne told them to get into the car first. While in the car, Chris asked Anne how she managed to survive in the forest, and Anne shared that she and her husband had tried to escape from the city when the zombie outbreak began. Anne mentioned that her husband used to hunt in this forest, so when the zombie outbreak started, Jason immediately took Anne and their child to the forest because he knew it was a relatively safe place. While waiting for the rain to stop, they talked about their past. Chris then began to share how he lost his loved one, who was Olivia's mother. Initially, when the zombie outbreak began, he and Olivia's mother, Susie, managed to quarantine themselves. However, when they heard that the government had found a vaccine, they went to where the government was located, only to find that the people were not actually working on a vaccine, but were just sitting around protecting themselves from the zombie outbreak. Soon after, Susie started to get infected by the zombie plague spread by flea bites, and Chris, unable to bear seeing her like that, was forced to kill Susie with his own hands. Then, he and Olivia decided to head north, until they met Anne. Earlier that day, Anne told Chris and Olivia to stay there first because the weather conditions made it impossible to travel. The next day, it was clear that Chris and Olivia finally had a moment to enjoy the little time they had, because they had never been able to relax at all. While they were fishing, Chris started to talk about his past when he went fishing with his friends, but this somehow disturbed Anne, and she asked Chris to stop talking. That night, Chris asked Anne why she had stopped his story in the morning, and Anne replied that they should not be relaxing like this. Then, Anne revealed that she used to be a nurse and had known about the zombie virus outbreak long before it spread worldwide. Unfortunately, they couldn't do anything because they still didn't know how to stop the zombie virus outbreak, and this always frightened Anne. She still couldn't forget the day she lost her family when Anne found out that Jason had died after being attacked by the zombies. She tried to stay strong because she still had a baby to protect. However, after a few days, they began to run out of food supplies, so Anne decided to search for food in a nearby house. Slowly, she entered the house until she found one of the occupants who had turned into a zombie, and without hesitation, she immediately killed the zombie. Then she took all the food supplies from the house. Unfortunately, when Anne returned, she realized that her child also had the same symptoms, spots similar to those of the zombie outbreak. However, not knowing what to do, Anne continued to care for her child while hoping the government would soon find a vaccine. Back to the present. When the morning came, Olivia began to ask Chris when they would leave and continue their journey. But it seemed that Chris could not leave Anne alone, which made Chris decide to delay their departure. Hearing this, Olivia seemed to become jealous of Anne because Chris cared more for Anne than for her. And not only that, Olivia also harbored feelings of love for Chris. Anne herself didn't mind sharing food with Chris and Olivia because their presence somehow made her feel calmer than having to survive alone. Then one day, while in the middle of the forest, Anne asked Chris when he would continue his journey. And there, Chris tried to persuade Anne to go with them because he thought traveling together was better than Anne staying alone in the forest. However, Anne was still too afraid to go out and face the zombies, so she declined Chris's invitation to go together. Then, as usual, when Anne and the others tried to find food while following a nearby river, Chris challenged Anne and Olivia that they must give him a prize if he could throw a stone right at a tree. Hearing this, Anne accepted Chris's challenge by saying that she would prepare a special dinner if Chris could complete his challenge. Meanwhile, Olivia said she would invite everyone to swim in the lake, even though she actually disliked swimming. The three of them seemed to enjoy the game, and even if only for a short time, they had forgotten the statement that the entire world had been destroyed by the zombie outbreak. Soon after, Chris successfully completed his challenge, earning all the rewards from Anne and Olivia. While they were swimming, Chris and Anne were seen joking with each other, making them grow closer. Even as they were having dinner, Chris and Anne showed their closeness, which made Olivia very jealous. The next day, Olivia again asked Chris why they were not leaving immediately, and she also asked if Chris liked Anne. But Chris only replied that he was simply amazed by Anne's resilience. Chris also felt indebted, because if Anne had not saved them, they would surely have been devoured by the zombies. Even though Olivia realized that Anne was much more useful than herself, she still could not accept if Chris started liking Anne. So she began to plan something to make Chris fall in love. Then Olivia tried to make herself look more beautiful and waited for Chris to come to the tent because she planned to draw Chris's attention with her body. But when Chris and Anne arrived for some reason, Chris went into the car saying to Anne that he really liked her, which made Olivia very sad and disappointed because Chris chose Anne over her. Secretly, Olivia took the remaining food supplies and carried them to a place while waiting until Chris and Anne woke up from their sleep. Unfortunately, as she was about to return, Olivia accidentally encountered one of the zombies roaming around, causing her to try to escape from the zombies' pursuit. On the other hand, when Chris and Anne were searching for Olivia, they heard screams, and without hesitation, Chris chased after the sound until he found Olivia being chased by a zombie. With the help of Chris and Anne, the three of them managed to defeat the zombie, and they quickly returned to avoid attracting any other zombies that might still be around. Chris then urged Anne to come with them because he felt that the place was no longer safe to stay. However, for some reason, Anne still did not want to leave, which made Chris very upset, leading to a fierce argument between them. It seemed Anne was not ready to leave the forest, though she actually had feelings for Chris because she was afraid of facing the same events where she lost her husband and child. Then in short, before Chris and Olivia left, Anne said she wanted to look for food supplies first and asked Chris to accompany her so they could bring back more supplies. Hearing this, Olivia also said she wanted to join them, so Anne helped cover Olivia's body with mud so that the zombies could not smell them. After all preparations were done, Chris quickly smeared animal blood on himself as he was to serve as bait to lure the zombies around. Once it was safe, Anne and Olivia quickly went into the house to take all the food supplies. However, while Anne was collecting food, Olivia suddenly hit Anne and tied her up in a closet. Then Olivia screamed to call the zombies. She then left Anne there with all the food supplies. As the zombies started to approach, Anne struggled to untie herself. Then she doused herself with bleach and hid in a box, hoping the zombies could not find her. Meanwhile, when Chris saw Olivia arrive, he asked where Anne was, but unbeknownst to them, the zombies had followed Olivia, which left Chris with no choice but to fight the zombies. Meanwhile, when Anne realized it was safe, she quickly retrieved the weapon she had left there before, then rushed to where Chris was and tried to help Chris fight off the attacking zombies. Unfortunately, although Anne managed to defeat the zombies, Chris failed to save himself from the zombie attack and eventually died. Meanwhile, Olivia managed to survive because she hid in the car. This made Anne reminisce about the past when she lost her family, which was very painful for Anne, and she began to wonder why she was always the one who survived this zombie outbreak. From that moment, Anne realized that she could not let the zombies continually take away all the people she dearly loved. So she decided to start slaughtering the zombies all over the world. Then the film ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.